spot. You're actually playing a playoff caliber game in order for you to get into the playoffs. So there's a lot of, I like to call them play-in games. We have one, a perfect example this Friday night. Howland is going to go to Canfield. If Canfield loses that game, their season's over.
They both got 2 losses.
Yeah, Canfield will not be able to get into the playoffs because they got Poland in Week 10, and that's not going to be enough computer points. They'd have to have a whole lot of help in order to get into the playoffs. But if they beat Howland, now they got a better than average shot at getting into the playoffs. For Howland, if they beat Canfield, okay, they're going to be in regardless if they lose to Harding.
But they got a big Week 10 anyway.
They got a big Week 10 anyway.
Could they lose to Canfield and then beat Harding and be in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, if they beat both of them, they'll be hosting a game in Week 11.
But interesting comment. They won last week and dropped a few slots. There's your competition.
And there's your competition. If you're playing a team that only has one win, you're not going to get a lot of second-level points off that team.
Well, that's what comes with the schedule that you play.
Absolutely.
You can't really do nothing about it. But
no, there's
the
nothing
teams
you
on
can
your
do
schedule.
about it. Now, if you have your conference, and I've said this time and time again, Gary, if you have a conference and you don't think your conference is any good, then you need to schedule outside of your conference and bulk that non-conference schedule up. Otherwise, you're not going to be doing any favors for your team as far as getting into the playoffs. Now, if you have a really, really good conference, all right, now you don't necessarily have to bulk up the non-conference schedule.
Well, real quickly, we have some Kennedy guys here. We'll talk about them, Cardinal Mooney and Urson guys. But other teams, Ron, maybe LeBray is one of those teams that kind of need to win and help themselves out a little bit.
I'll tell you what, LeBray might be the best team that no one's ever heard of in Trumbull County, because we start talking about Harding and Howland and Hubbard and JFK. LeBray's number 2 in Division 5, Region 17, and they are playing some very, very good football. If they get into the playoffs, they're going to be heard from. That is a good football team.
It's a good football team. They were in last year and had a disappointing finish, though, last year.
Well, courtesy of Crestview.
Yeah.
That Crestview team was very good last year.
They were, and Crestview's not having it so good year this season.
No, they're young, and offensively, they're not very good this year, and that's a shame because 9 times out of 10, Crestview normally has a very good offensive team.
Quite surprising with some of the talent that they did have coming back. Crestview.
Oh yeah, it was a little surprising that they're not doing well, but their quarterback is new, the running back is new, the receivers are relatively new. That's tough.
One of the other Trumbull County teams, Lakeview. Can they get in?
I think that Lakeview Struthers game is going to be the playoff
Week
game
10.
for them. That's if they can. They have champion in Week 9,
which is 4-4 team.
And they'll get some points provided they beat them. I don't think that's going to be enough, though. They're going to have to beat Struthers or get an awful lot of help in order to get in.
And Struthers got to make sure they don't get caught in the trap game. Looking forward to.
Well,
to Lakeview.
that Week 9 game is a trap game for Struthers, and they got to avoid that because that game against Lakeview is going to be a really good, really, really good football game.
I was at the Struthers game last week against Hubbard. Great ball game there.
Oh yeah.
Muzzolino got hurt, came back, and ended up getting the interception to kind of seal the victory for the Wildcats. They're in good shape right now.
How good is that offensive line?
Well, they have to keep doing it, though.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they do. And if they're healthy, they make a deep run in the postseason. What I'd like to see is a Struthers-Mooney matchup.
Well, with
that
that Mooney victory over Harding,
we might get that.
That could be a Week 13 game now.
It could very well be. I think Struthers and Mooney could make deep playoff runs. If they avoid each other and meet in the regional finals, that'd be awesome.
But before Mooney could do anything about it, they have a big game coming up this weekend, huh?
They do. Forget about Ursuline's record. Look, Ursuline and Mooney throw all the records out when these two teams play each other. Ursuline's got a lot of urgency. If they want to get back into the playoff chase, they got to take care of Mooney, and then they got to take care of St. V's in Week 10. But look, forget about the playoffs for a second. This is all about pride. I mean, when Ursuline and Mooney play each other, records thrown out the window. There's a lot of pride involved in this game. It's a fantastic game year in, year out.
How are you leaning in that game, Ron? What do you see anyway?
Look, Larry Kemp and I have been friends for over 30 years.
Can't go against him.
I'm an Ursuline guy. As long as Coach Kemp is there, I'm an Ursuline guy. Steve Leslie's son, Daniel, is on that team as well. I don't have a dog in the fight per se because none of my relatives are playing on this team, but I do have friends, so I'd kind of like to see Ursuline win the game, even though I think Mooney will probably win.
Mooney, it's not a must-win, but they need to keep playing well, right?
Yeah, Mooney needs to keep playing well. I don't think there's any question about it. But push comes to shove. if you look at PJ Fecko and say, is this a must-win? He's going to look at you and say, it's Ursuline. Hell yeah, it's a must-win. Yeah, it's I mean, you want to be able to have that victory over your arch rival.
If Ursuline pulls the upset, if we'll call it an upset, Mooney got to beat Fitch week 10 to get in the playoffs.
Well,
possibly.
yeah. Well, I mean, Moody will probably be in the playoffs.
Okay.
But, yeah, they would
home
have
game,
to beat Fitch. They don't get a home game unless they're able to win 1 out of 2 here. Yeah.
And Fitch has their own problems this week with Boardman, maybe. That's a little rivalry game for those those two teams.
Boardman finally woke up.
Against Ursuline. They pretty much ruined Ursuline's season.
Well, yeah, I mean, they put a huge dent in Ursuline's season. I don't think there's any question about that. And if Boardman plays like they played against Ursuline, they have a shot against Fitch.
What does Fitch's season look like from this point?
Well,
Beat Boardman, beat Mooney. Does that do anything?
Beat Boardman, beat Mooney. Maybe you do get
Pray.
into the postseason. You're probably going to need a little bit of help. But if you beat Boardman and Mooney, that's a good amount of computer points. They may be able to sneak into number 8.
South Range is pretty much a lock.
Yeah, they're
They had
pretty
a little
much
bump
a
in the
lock.
road one week.
They
Now
did have a bump in the road, but I'm going to be curious as to see what South Range does in these final 2 games of the season. I think they'll get a home game. They got a tough game this Friday, but I think South Range is a serious player in Division 5, Region 17. Canton Central Catholic is the gold standard in that region, but I think Ursuline has a legitimate chance to win that region.
You know a little bit about the schools in the lower tiers.
Oh, yeah.
Springfield Local has a kind of a big game coming
Springfield
up.
has a game against Crestview, and Crestview's not dead yet. Crestview's got Springfield, and they have Lisbon. And as weird as this sounds, they can win both of those games, and at 5-5, still get into the playoffs. It would be unprecedented, but I think that it could be done if they were to win both the games. I don't think they will. I think Springfield knocks off Crestview, and we'll see what happens in week number 10. Lisbon has a date with Leetonia down in Lisbon.
You know a little bit about that.
I might know a little bit about this. Here's the deal on these 2 teams. This is, without question, the longest standing rivalry in this area, and people don't know this. These 2 teams have played each other for over 100 years consistently.
That's a lot of spaghetti.
Year after year after year. It's called the Spaghetti Bowl. The trophy is a 25-pound porcelain spaghetti bowl. Now, back when I was in high school, the winning team got a spaghetti dinner, and the losing team served the winning team the spaghetti dinner. In the PC world that we're in now, they don't do that anymore. But we had a whole lot of spaghetti with Lisbon serving us back in the day.
And I see you and Sergeant Bob are having a little kumbaya here.
Oh yeah, he's now into the Leetonia thing as well. So it's once you're a bear, you're always a bear, as I always say.
Sergeant Bob's a Brookfield guy, but he coaches the junior high there.
Sergeant Bob and I have another thing in common. Marty McCabe. Marty McCabe was an assistant football coach at Leetonia. He then went to Brookfield. He had the fortune of having Marty McCabe as a history teacher. Marty McCabe, in St. Patty's Day, as a history teacher, sings Irish songs. That's it. That's all he does. Doesn't talk anything about history. Irish songs, the whole freaking class. It was ridiculous.
Look what we learned here on this show. Columbiana maybe be the only other team we managed this so far.
Columbiana plays Wellsville in week 9. They'll play Leetonia in week number 10. And I got to tell you, Gary, barring a miracle, I don't see Columbiana going into the playoffs. And that's a shame, too, because their game, they had to have the game against Lisbon. And unfortunately, Mitch Davidson got hurt and wasn't able to play in that game. And it cost them. Lisbon smoked them pretty good. So Wellsville's a 4-win team. You'll get a few computer points. And as much as I hate to say this, my alma mater has only won 1 game this year. You're not going to get a lot of computer points out of Leetonia. I don't think Columbiana gets into the playoffs unless they get an awful lot of help.
East
And that's a shame.
Palestine? East Palestine? No?
Palestine's number 9 in Division 6.
Little
And
help?
they got a shot.
Okay.
They got a legitimate shot at getting this. They're going to have to win out and get a little bit of help, but they have a legitimate shot to get into the playoffs.
One crack here real quick, Ron. I know you're not a fan of what happened in the ITCL.
I hate it.
Real quick, can you give us a little nutshell on that, what your opinion is? And
Well, look, at the end of the day, what it has come down to is the rest of the schools have decided on whether I agree with it or not, whether the people agree with it or not. This is an absolute fact. It's undeniable, and this is how it is. The rest of the ITCL schools put it upon themselves to tell everyone who would listen that South Range and Crestview were unbeatable and that they couldn't beat them and that they wanted both of these teams out of the Inter-Tri-County League, which to me is an absolute crock of crap because the last 2 years, Crestview has not won the ITCL Red Division. Palestine won it last year. Crestview will not win it this year. South Range has had some has had some mediocrity in their 5 or 6 years. 2 of those 6 years, they were mediocre. So to sit back and say, well, we can't compete with them. And it's not because they're bigger, because South Range and Crestview are not that much bigger than the rest of the schools in the ITCL. These other schools have just sat back and said, well, we can't play against them. And I have said this on my show. It would be equal to when Sebring under Rick Brook completely dominated the Tri-County League in the
Basketball.
70s and 80s in basketball. It would be like everyone in the TCL going to Sebring and saying, yeah, you're out of here. We don't want to play you anymore. You beat us too much. Go home. We don't want you in this league. It's absurd. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. These two teams are not that big to be thrown out of the conference. You're throwing them out because you couldn't beat them year after year. Well, here's a little piece of advice. Get a better program and then go after them. And I don't blame South Range and Crestview for not wanting to play any of these schools in their non-conference schedule. I hope that they freeze them out.
Well, I guess I don't have to ask how you really feel about it.
No,
so.
it's ridiculous. It smacks of what people are thinking about today. Well, if we can't beat the competition, we don't want to play them. Where the hell did we learn this stuff? I mean, it wasn't that way when we were kids.
Finally, has Kennedy got a shot to do well? They got a tough game this week. They're on next with us. Don
Kennedy,
Perlogo brought some kids with him.
If Kennedy gets healthy, the sky's the limit for them. But here's
2
the
tough
thing.
games.
Here's the thing. I mean, St. Joe's is going to be a tough opponent for them. St. Thomas Aquinas, very tough opponent. If they can get healthy, they have a deep run in them. But Mogador is in that division and in that region. That's going to be a tough nut to crack.
Do we have a state champion here in the Valley? On the Ohio side, anyway.
I think we have a legitimate chance with Harding. We have a legitimate chance with Mooney. We have a legitimate chance with JFK. And don't sleep on South Range. I think South Range, if they can solve Canton Central Catholic, they have a legitimate chance.
Sounds like that preseason show we did on WFMJ when I said a few of those teams back.
Yeah, except we didn't have to look at Bolish's ugly mug. Yeah, look at me, pot calling the kettle black over here.
He's Ron Podesta, and he's in radio. And,
I'm in radio and
he's
proud of it.
and,
I got no face here, boys.
And he's got an opinion that he's not afraid to share with anybody.
Amen to
And
that.
we thank you for doing this,
All
Ron.
right, Gary,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you so much.
Thanks for having me on your show as well.
Oh, hey, no problem.
We'll be back with more Yards After Contact from Kelly's Barn, Youngstown, Ohio.
Hi, sports fans. This is Ron Potesta. As you can see, I have an ugly face. It is a face made for radio. If I were on TV, I'd scare the living hell out of every single human being in the Mahoning Valley. That's why I'm on radio. And you can hear me Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 on the Sports Animal 1390.
And welcome back to Kelly's Barn, Mahoney Avenue in Youngstown, Ohio. This is Yards After Contact. The next guest from Warren JFK, defensive coordinator. He's been around a couple different programs. Ursuline High graduate in the mid '80s. Don Perlogo. Don, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
Your team. Let's talk about the JFK Eagles.
Yep.
They're in a good situation right now.
Yeah.
2 weeks left in the season. Pretty good things are going on. Coach Beggs having a good season for you guys. How is it at JFK? Give us your perspective.
It's awesome. Our kids are playing well. The kids bought in 2 years ago when we got here, and they believed in what Coach Bake was trying to get them to do, and what we all wanted them to do, and it's been a great experience. We're playing a lot of seniors right now, and those kids all played as sophomores, and we got a lot of juniors that are playing right now that played as freshmen. So it's been a building process, but the kids bought in.
A lot of people talk about injuries when we talk about Kenny for some reason. Maybe because Jacob Coates went down early in the season.
Sure.
This past week, maybe you had 1 or 2 more injuries. Kind of give us an update, what you can, what you feel comfortable in saying, and how things are going right now.
The good thing is we're getting Jake back. He's been cleared by his doctor. I don't think he'll be playing this week, but he'll be back.
So he won't be back in week 9 probably, but
No, but
maybe week 10.
Yeah, Exactly. So that's a positive to get him back, even though it's game 10. Because of our record and where we are in the region, it looks like we're going to go obviously past game 10 into the playoffs, and we're going to have an opportunity to have him play for us. So that's a big one. And as far as injuries go, you know, the team itself is like everybody else going into week 9, probably beat up a little bit. But we've got a couple other kids that have dealt with a concussion issue here or there. And we had a linebacker who broke his wrist. You know, he's going to be able to play. He's got a cast on it, and they're going to pad it up, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that. But he's a key player for us, and hopefully he'll be able to handle that and be able to play for us.
Maybe your center got banged up a little bit?
He's the one that is coming back from a concussion, and he's in the protocol. So when the doctors say he's cleared to play, he'll be back. I mean, he's been to practice, and he's doing well now. But obviously,